How's it going, everyone? It's Javi here, and today we're going to talk more about the hurricane season and interesting developments we've been seeing over the past few weeks and how that could affect the hurricane season when it comes to the amount of storms that develop and also potentially where exactly these storms are more likely to make landfall. So first, of course, one of the big things we need to take a look at is the sea surface temperature anomaly. And we've been seeing a pretty interesting trend over the past few months where this hurricane season is expected overall to bring sea surface temperatures warmer than average. However, the big elephant in the room is taking a look at the main development region where we see just off the West African coast, we do see a pretty large pocket of cooler than average sea surface temperatures right over the area where you're more likely to receive tropical cyclone development during the peak months of the hurricane season like August and September. And the reason being is due to the fact that we've been seeing a very strong persistent Bermuda high that's been stronger than usual to start the year. And what that's been doing is creating a pressure gradient between a low pressure system that's located just off the West African coast as well as a much stronger than usual Bermuda high. And that pressure gradient is creating a strong easterly flow that's creating an upwelling going on right over just off the West African coast. And pretty much the definition of upwelling is when cooler water rises up to the surface. And since the easterly winds been so strong pushing the water away from the coast along West Africa, that's been allowing a lot more water of that cooler, deeper water to rise up to replace that warmer water on the surface that's being pushed to the west. So as a result, we're seeing much cooler than average sea surface temperatures as of right now for the month of May. We're gonna need to see if this continues. However, based on the trends we're seeing with this stronger than usual ridge, as well as what some of the climatological models are saying, it seems like the winds won't necessarily wind down so much to a point where the sea surface temperatures could warm up. Of course, there's still a lot of months before we can reach the peak of the hurricane season, and we know that a lot could change when it comes to the hurricane season, especially when we're talking about sea surface temperatures. All the Atlantic really needs is a few weeks to where this ridge would be a little bit weaker, where the winds become lighter, and allows that water to warm up a bit, where we see less upwelling as well. And that could really change the fate of how the sea surface temperatures look by the time we reach the peak of the hurricane season. So I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next few videos. However, it seems like the climatological models I'm gonna show you right now are leaning still towards the winds being stronger than normal over the main development region, which certainly could be good news in keeping the sea surface temperatures at around average or slightly below average over the main development region. Let me show you guys that right now. So first, let me show you the forecasted wind speed along the surface based on the CFS model, at least the monthly average. So because of course the surface level winds are the winds that will play the most pivotal role in determining if we're going to see a lot of upwelling still right just off the West African coast or not. And we clearly see that in the peak month of September 2025, we see that the surface level winds are expected to be stronger than normal just off the West African coast, which could be good news that could allow for a little bit more upwelling to occur even as we approach the peak months of the hurricane season. Let's move back to August, and we see that it's expected to be around average when it comes to the wind speed, maybe slightly above average in some portions just off the West African coast when it comes to surface level winds. So that certainly could be good news and still at least making sure the upwelling still occurs just off the West African coast for the sea surface temperatures to be cooler. If we go into July and even into June, we see that not much changes when it comes to how strong the winds are, as for the most part for the next few months the CFS model is expecting the surface level winds to be at around average or in some cases above average just off the West African coast. And if this continues, then we could very well see the sea surf temperatures stay cooler than normal even as we approach the main hurricane season months. So I'll keep you guys updated, but I do think this is certainly good news, and that will, at least in my opinion, keep the hurricane season from being necessarily very hyperactive when we're seeing sea surf temperatures that are more likely expected to remain cooler than average, or at least around average, compared to other hurricane seasons we've been having in more recent years, where the sea surf temperature has been warmer than normal right over the main development region. However, I still want to point out that that's only one part of the northern Atlantic, because of course, if we look at literally anywhere else that would be more vulnerable to hurricane development, we see that it definitely is more inclined of bringing more tropical cyclone development than usual, thanks to how much warmer the sea surf temperatures are pretty much everywhere else outside the main development region. We see it over the Caribbean, we see it over the Gulf of Mexico. We do see some pockets where it's slightly below average in terms of sea surf temperatures. We're going to need to see if that continues, but for the most part throughout the Caribbean as well as the Gulf of Mexico, they're warmer than average. So I do still believe that will contribute to this hurricane season being above normal. And even if the sea surf temperatures are cooler than normal, at least in the eastern portion of the main development region, look at the western portion of the main development region, the sea surf temperatures quickly rise. So even if a tropical entity is struggling in this area of the main development region, that may not be the case in this area, where the sea surf temperatures will rapidly rise, and that will allow for a lot more of an upward lift and just more convective activity to occur by the time this approaches the western portion of the main development region. And for a lot of tropical cyclones we see during the hurricane season, that may just be enough, since it's pretty common we see tropical cyclones that struggle early on before they eventually rapidly intensify, even in the western portion of the main development region. So I still do believe that will contribute to a more active than usual hurricane season. Maybe not as super hyperactive like we've been seeing in prior hurricane seasons, but it should more likely than not be above normal, especially due to the fact that we're expected to be in a neutral pattern by the time we approach a peak hurricane season months, and there is still a good possibility of a La Nina pattern. So right now, the chance is very close between the months of October and even September. But right now, it seems like the most recent forecast from the CPC is that it's leaning a little bit more to a neutral pattern occurring by the time we approach the main hurricane season months. So we should expect that. So a neutral pattern, like it suggests, is brings conditions that are anywhere between an El Nino to a La Nina, but due to the fact that the La Nina chance is higher than an El Nino chance by the time we approach the main hurricane season months, it's more likely that we're going to see sea surf temperatures hover a little bit closer to the below average range over the ENSO 3.4 region rather than the above average range. Because if we were to see the sea surf temperatures lean a little bit more to the above average phase, then the El Nino probability should be much higher, but it isn't. So I'd expect that even though we're in the neutral pattern, it should still lean a little bit more to what you'd expect for a weak La Nina. And when you combine that with the fact that sea surf temperatures are going to be expected to be warmer than normal over the Atlantic, that will lead to overall an above average hurricane season. In terms of other stuff that could potentially save us from this hurricane season being more active than usual is taking a look at the upper level wind patterns, as we've been seeing a little bit more good news from the CFS model that during the main hurricane season months, which include September and August, wind shear could be stronger than usual over the main development region. If we were to take a look at the 3-month average for those main months, we do see a good portion of the main development region is expected to receive wind shear that could be stronger than normal. So we're going to need to see if this keeps up. It's of course very difficult to forecast wind shear this far out. However, based on the pattern, like I said, we've been seeing with this Bermuda high being stronger than usual, as well as the surface level winds being stronger than usual, I think that could potentially lead to more wind shear than usual over the main development region, which could definitely help out in limiting the amount of tropical cyclones we see. And but I also want to point out there's also another end to this that might not be as good. And that's the fact that since we could see a stronger ridge than usual, that could also bring more tropical cyclones a little bit further westward, since we see a stronger easterly flow, which could lead to more tropical cyclone landfalls if we were to see tropical cyclones develop in these areas. So that's another end of the spectrum we also need to consider this hurricane season, which is why I do believe that we're going to see tropical cyclones hit the areas a little bit more westward than your average hurricane season, not only because the sea surface temperatures are warmer than normal right over the mainly over the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, at least comparatively to the main development region, but also we could see stronger surface level winds as well as upper level winds coming from the east that will push a lot of the tropical cyclones further westward. So the Gulf of Mexico, you need to keep an eye on this, the Caribbean as well, and even large portions of Central America. I would be a little bit more alert for tropical cyclones moving a little bit further westward this hurricane season, thanks to the pattern we've been seeing. So here's my new forecast when it comes to the hurricane season. So I'm expecting 17 named storms, 8 hurricanes, as well as 4 major hurricanes. So slightly above normal compared to the more recent average between 1991 and 2020, a little bit less than my previous video, thanks to the fact that the sea surface temperatures are looking a little bit cooler than I'd expect by this point of the year. So I think that could help potentially limit a little bit more tropical cyclones, and I do believe that the stronger wind shear we could see over the main development region could also help limiting tropical cyclones this year as well. However, I still do expect it to be above average because I think we're going to be in the neutral phase that will lean a little bit more to a weaker La Nina when it comes to its type of conditions. And also the sea surface temperatures throughout the northern Atlantic are still going to be much warmer than normal. So this is my hurricane season forecast. If you want even more in detail forecasts, just make sure to comment down below for any questions you may have for the hurricane season, and I'll be happy to answer them, as I'll certainly keep you guys updated over the next few weeks regarding the hurricane season. And if we could see any developments in the near future, we are approaching that time period. Of course, the official start of the hurricane season is June 1st, but we've been seeing a good amount of years where tropical cyclones develop earlier than that. So I'll certainly keep an eye out on that and make sure to update you guys if we do see anything develop or have a chance of developing. So definitely stay tuned for that. But that's it for now, guys, and I'll thank you guys for watching.